I've heard of a campaign, a project called Everyday Sexism. This is similar to a video made recently about he for she and the flaws of that campaign. This is slightly older. It goes back, I think it was launched last year, I don't know exactly, by a British woman called Laura Bates. Anyway, this is the introduction to the Everyday Sexism Project website. Welcome to the Everyday Sexism Project. It seems to be increasingly difficult to talk about sexism, equality and women's rights in a modern society that perceives itself to have achieved gender equality. In this liberal modern age, to complain about everyday sexism or suggest that you are unhappy about the way in which women are portrayed and perceived renders you likely to be labelled uptight, prudish, a militant feminist or a bra burner. The Everyday Sexism Project aims to take a step towards gender equality by proving wrong those who tell women that they can't complain because we are equal. It is a place to record stories of sexism faced on a daily basis by ordinary women in ordinary places, to show that sexism exists in abundance in the UK workplace and that it's very far from being a problem we no longer need to discuss, to provoke responses so numerous and wide-ranging that the problem becomes impossible to ignore, to report the way that you have been treated even if it has not been taken seriously elsewhere, to stand up and say this isn't right, even if it isn't big or outrageous or shocking, even if you've got used to think that it's just the way things are. Women who complain about disrespectful comments being made to female members in the House of Commons are accused of overreacting, yet only 22% of MPs are female. Those who object to the sexist portrayal of women in media are branded killjoys, yet nearly 70% of speaking parts in Hull. Well, it goes on to say that it's quite a long article actually. I'll put a link as always so that, don't take my word for it. I never try to enforce my views on viewers. You can judge for yourself. This is simply my views. Firstly, it is absolutely true that there are examples of laddish culture in modern Britain. This is, I'm going to talk specifically about Britain in this video because it's the context I'm most familiar with. It's unquestionable that there is that culture out there. It's also true that there are men out there who do disrespect women and think they're being funny by cracking really crude sexist jokes that are basically misogynistic in nature. And this, I think, is promoted by the likes of The Sun and the Daily Star and Lads magazines. Okay, that's all a fact. It's also true that sexual harassment and sexual discrimination in the workplace, which is a form of bullying, can really, really impact people's lives. Again, all true and all unfortunate. So, in taking on this issue, I want to start by making it clear that in no way am I disputing some of the things that she's bringing up. Okay? Those things should be talked about and they should be addressed. I'm not disputing that. However, once again, this is just an example of the profound double standards in a feminist campaign that is talking about a problem and yet completely ignoring 50% of the problem, which is similar issues faced by men. Now, I know that a lot of feminists out there will retort, oh, but men don't get wolf whistled at, men don't get the same level of sexist jokes and so on. It may be true that there's different comparisons insofar as men don't get the same level of crude sexist jokes. That may well be true, although I'm not sure how anyone can actually record that. I mean, how can you physically work out what sort of level is happening? It's purely perception. Really, that's what it is. I want to address some of the points. First of all, the title is the Everyday Sexism Project. Well, that automatically is flawed. Just like he for she, it insinuates that it's universal and inclusive. No, it's not. It's just about women. So it should be called the Everyday Sexism Project Against Women, or the Everyday Anti-Women Sexism Project, something like that. The title is misleading. That automatically raises question marks about the campaign because it's dishonest. It's not about sexism in general, it's only about sexism faced by women. Okay, now some of the things that she's saying here Women complain are labelled uptight, prudish, a militant feminist, or a bra burner. Okay, some of that is true. Unfortunately, when sexist issues do occur, unfortunately there are some men out there, I have to admit this, who respond in a very immature way and automatically get defensive and sort of trivialize the claims. That is unfair. Okay, so I recognize that it is maybe quite difficult for women to complain about it. So the next bit, like I say, is talking about women speaking out on these issues. Okay, now this bit I really want to address. Women who complain about disrespectful comments being made to female members in the House of Commons are accused of overreacting, yet only 22% of MPs are female. Now, why is it that when some very disrespectful comments are made to male members, that's okay, and yet when disrespectful comments are made to women members, that's not okay? There is an inconsistency here. If you're talking about respect in the House of Commons, then surely that should be universal. Members are told off all the time by the Speaker for behaving in a non-parliamentary way. And very often the people who are being targeted are other male MPs. I'm not disputing that women do get targeted. But the idea that women MPs are completely above that sort of language themselves is very misleading, I think. The truth is, the House of Commons is a rough place, and this isn't a justification for it. You know, I think they need to lead by example in terms of workplace bullying. It's not right, it's petty, it's childish, it's wrong, and it should be condemned. But this insinuates that only women MPs get insulted by their peers. Now that is blatantly not true. It is blatantly not true. One member was called, well actually it was the Speaker himself, was called a sanctimonious little dwarf. Now it may not be sexist, but it's certainly disrespectful. And there's examples all the time of immature things being said about members. I mean, look at the sheer level of ridicule all the party leaders get in caricatures and even in quality newspapers. Ed Miliband is constantly portrayed as Wallace from Wallace and Gromit. Nick Clegg is portrayed as literally being Cameron's bitch. Sorry for the language, but that's the sort of in-joke of the times. So surely that's derogatory. So why not the same issue applied there? Why? Because they're men, therefore it doesn't matter. So I think it's just a case of I think it's just double standards. Women who object to the over-sexualization of female celebrities are told it's a choice, yet it's almost impossible to think of a modern female singer who hasn't bared all. Well, that doesn't really... I'm not quite sure what she's saying there. On one hand, she's saying that a lot of female singers do it, and yet, just before that, she said that the retort is a choice. So that's just the point. In many cases, it is a choice. And it's a classic example of feminists blaming men for the choice of women. And she completely ignores the objectification of men, which is very evident in women's magazines. You know, when they talk about the dad's culture, why is it they ignore women's gossip magazines, which are just as shallow? And just for the record, I'm no fan of so-called lads mags, like the likes of Nuts and so on. I really have no time for them. But I honestly see women's magazines as just as trashy and just as shallow. So why is it feminists only focus on lads magazines? If they really have a problem with sexism and portrayal of women in the media, why only focus on lads magazines? Could it be that the women's magazines are edited by women, therefore they can't be criticised? Is only men can be criticised by feminists. Unless, of course, it is women who don't subscribe to their ideology. Yeah, and then it just goes on to encourage women to contact them. The reason I take issue with this is it is blatantly based on double standards. The Everyday Sexism project is not about everyday sexism, it is about sexism experienced by women. Now, there are many areas whereby men are portrayed in a certain way that is also very judgmental. I mean, look at the number of Hollywood roles where you have tough female leads beating the crap out of men, left, right and centre, and those men are seen as disposable. So what does Laura Bates have to say about that? You get advertisements all the time that show the stupid male versus the intelligent, free-thinking, strong woman. And to me this just represents a nauseating hypocrisy of the feminist movement. I mean, initially she begrudges the fact that women are called militant feminists if they complain. I don't think it's necessarily a case of women who actually have experienced sexism being called that, although that might be true in some cases. It's more women who launch these hypocritical campaigns who actually are militant feminists. So I would like to ask a few questions to... I mean, she says that women are silenced from complaining, but I would like to challenge her. Okay, how about men who raise men's issues? Do they get listened to in Parliament? No. No. And frankly, these sort of campaigns that are divisive, based on distortion, and just promote blatant double standards do piss me off, because it's not about sexism at all. It's about promoting a blatantly feminist agenda. If this was about sexism, then fine, cover all those issues, but also cover areas where men are impacted. But guess what? To me, this is just further evidence of what the feminist movement is: divisive, hypocritical, and nauseating.